Have you ever tried a choux pastry and just couldn't get it right? Well, this next recipe shows us the easiest way to improve on our baking skills. From a, Tumi, you help me, you say this perfectly.
Profiterole.
Profiteroles, from profiteroles to eclairs, everyone needs a little help in the kitchen. And that's why Chef Tjaart will be showing us how to perfect the art of choux pastry and the many ways to use it.
Well, can I say, phew, you talk a lot. But anyway,
I'm telling you!
anyway, absolutely, choux pastry, eclairs, profiteroles, and they've all got their sort of names and their sort of demeanors there. We know an eclair is something that is long, and then our lovely choux buns, which are lovely and round, which we've got there.
Stunning.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more there. I just want to get the first bit going in. So I just warmed up my pan here. I'm going to add in some water to start with there. So pop into your water as well as your sugar. Now, you don't have to put sugar in because you can actually make a savory version of this as well by adding like a lovely cheese filling. So think of like a cheese sauce instead of a creme patisserie, which we're talking about, you know, which we'll be doing a little bit later on and you're talking about just now. And then a little bit of vanilla is going to go into that as well. And then in with our butter, okay? So what we're going to do now is just melt the butter. Really important, please, South Africa, is do not bring this to a rapid boil where you're going to start to split the fat and the proteins. It is very important that the emulsification stays within the protein and the fat content of the butter.
Okay, so we don't want it to split, we want it to all stay together.
So heat on there, I'm just going to crank that up now there, and just allow that to basically dissolve. The butter emulsifies with that water, and then to that what we're going to be doing is adding in our flour, which is basically making your roux part. So remember, we make a basic white sauce, a bechamel, which is your flour and your butter. It's exactly what we're doing here, but with the addition of water, because that's going to give us the wonderful elasticity of it. Why we also heat up this water is this is going to make it a lot softer, a lot lighter, but also it will allow us to actually dry the skin out sufficiently that we can actually put a filling in as well. So that's why you want to heat this up to a point of where you're going to start to, you know, loosen and start to cook the starch content in here.
Okay, so Chef Tjaart, being able to make a choux pastry seems very higher grade, if I may say, and a lot of people just don't get it right. So in the process that you're doing, just now for part one, what would you say the key is to getting that right before we touch base with Tumi?
Well, I think you've got to get this mixture dissolved or emulsified at a temperature still warm enough that's going to go into the flour, and then you're going to make sure this comes off the heat and you mix it together that there's no lumps. So get in there and get working. So my arm's like, really, it's pumped up and ready to mix. So those are two rules quickly there.
And also, Chef, just I want to ask you as well, since we're doing this and you're adding sugar, do you also then want to make sure the sugar dissolves before you add the next step?
Absolutely. So very important to incorporate that because you've got to break that sugar down. You don't want little pockets of sugar crystals in there because it's basically, in essence, going to crystallize. So again, that sugar, breaking it down. As I said, leave out the sugar because then you can have a savory version of it. A little pinch of salt actually helps a lot as well. Not because you want saltiness, but that aids with the flavor of the actual, profiterole or choux bun, whatever you are actually making at the end of the day. Okay. Or I mean, this goes into so many other things. You can start making it into churros and things like that. So lots of things that this can sort of develop and change into. So if you have a look there, that's all sort of melted. Happy with that? Just about, yeah. Okay, so that's into there, and then off with the heat and then into the flour. Okay. So the flour needs to go in just like that. So let's just sort of get that into there and then let's start just working that little bit by little bit to get that paste. And using a wooden spoon, very important, not a whisk, because the whisk is going to catch all these things in the actual balloon part of it. Remember, it's off the heat and we're just going to start incorporating that and it's going to get thicker and thicker and globular. Don't worry, we're using a wooden spoon at this stage, so we don't have to worry about thinking, oh, it's going to be lumpy and all the rest of it. Yeah. You're going to get in there and you're going to start actually working it. Now, this is very important because I'm going to be talking this about with our chocolate cake a little bit later on. This has got like sort of a jelly consistency. So remember that because this is going to help with the lightness, the softness, the fluffiness of everything on here. So I'm going to keep working this and you're going to work this until it starts to cool down, and then all the important part is what Tumi is going to be showing us what to do next with our actual choux pastry. All right, so in essence what I've got here is what you've made, but it's just been chilled because now we're going to start adding our eggs into this mixture. In essence what we're doing now is we're going to give the choux pastry body, because as you've seen, Chef added the flour into there. There's no raising
agent. There's nothing that actually allows it to, you know, fill up. So this is where the eggs come in. I'm going to add them one at a time. And the reason for this is you don't want the dough to be too runny. You want it to be as firm as possible so that you're able to pipe the mixture in. And then you also don't want to make sure that you end up adding too much and it's too runny. You want to be able to manage the dough itself. And like I mentioned, the egg itself will then be the raising agent. You'll see once we cut into one of them, you'll actually be able to see like some spaces in there, some little holes in there, which is in essence where the air came in and the steaming of that. So I'm just going to keep adding these eggs into this mixture. But chef, I just want to find out, right? Let's just say someone wants an alternative to say make a choux pastry, but let's just say a vegetarian or vegan option. What binding agent or ingredient would they add to replace the eggs in this instance?
Well, so one thing you mentioned earlier on, what's very important is the raising agent of this. Now, you're going down quite a rocky road when you're starting to take out the eggs and the butter contents. You need that fat content, but you need a raising agent that's going to help in there. So generally, you want to do is you're going to sort of start looking at a combination of bicarb and baking powder that's going to give that kind of rise to it. But you can start adding that wonderful creaminess. You can start looking for things like coconut milk as well. Will also help it. So you can, it's going to give something a lot richer, a lot sort of denser in its sort of application, I guess, which the eggs are, and giving us that wonderful richness. So remember, eggs are not just a raising agent, it's also a richener, it's a fat, it's giving flavour as well. So you can add things in like a coconut milk to actually start to bind all that together, but you need that raising agent to give it some lightness and some fluffiness to go with it as well. Oil as well, but you've got to be very careful because that starts changing the actual heating levels that you actually get in the product as well. So thinking like a coconut oil is a much lower temperature to actually cook with, which is the same for eggs as well. Where people say, yes, oil's great in a cake or something, but we've got to be very careful on that there as well.
Okay, so after Dumi's egg station, we've made sure that the foundation of the choux pastry is taken care of. Now comes the piping part, because we want our choux pastries to kind of look like these little treats.
Absolutely. So what you do is once that mixture's cooled down, it's pop it into a piping bag. Now, if you haven't got a disposable piping bag like we have here, or you haven't got one yourself, a good old Ziploc bag. You know those freezer bags? Those are a great version. Or if you really, I've even had to use plastic shopping bags. Yeah. You need to.
I was actually going to ask. I only have those plastic shopping bags, so we can use those. But also, I mean, it would be ideal to just get your hands on a good piping bag.
So what's very important with the piping bag is you're going to start twisting at one end, and you can see the mixture starting to go up there. You actually twist. You don't just squeeze. Most people, what they do is they grab here and they go, ugh.
Yes.
Don't squeeze. This hand guides. All right, so your left hand always guides. This one you're going to keep sort of twisting. Now, depending on what you want to do, if you want to do sort of like in a clear, which is probably the easiest, little trick, whatever, a little bit underneath there, and that just sticks down your piece of baking paper on there, just like that there. And then up to you. So you're going to be just starting to squeeze very slightly, and then even pressure from the top always. This is very light, yeah? Very light here, and evenly go like that there.
Okay, right. Stunning. Okay. So once you've piped it and it is ready to go into the oven, what is the baking time and what is the temperature?
So you want 200 degrees, so you want nice and hot because you're going to get that air in there to puff it up. It's really got to sort of jump up there until it's golden brown, 15, 20 minutes, depending on your oven there. Just a quick one. When you get something like that that's sort of stuck up there, take a little bit of water and just dab the top of it down, and that'll give you a lovely surface. So play around with it. Your mixtures might vary depending on the size of your eggs and things like that, but just work it like that and then just dab on top.
And put it down.
Like that there.
Okay, so it seems as if we're halfway done with creating this magic. I mean, at the end of the day, the choux pastry needs something to be filled within the inside. But if you want to find out how to get the foundation right, just head over to afternoonexpress.co.za for the full ingredients. This looks absolutely delicious. A true treat.